Shawna and Jody here with Real Sisters, Real Talk.
We're glad to have you joining us as we talk about growing in our faith with God.
Hey, welcome to Real Sisters, Real Talk. I'm Shawna, and that is my sister Jody, and life is busy. We are in 2025 now. We made it through the month of January. We're working our way closer and closer to March. We're in it, and life is busy, and there's a lot going on. And Jody, you have some very, very exciting news in your family.
I do have some exciting news. I have a new grandson. He is adorable. His name is Jones Alder, and he was born on January 28th. And Kellen and baby Jones are doing so good, and little Faye adores him. She thinks he's just the greatest thing, which is it's just really sweet to watch the whole thing. Ty's got quite a bit of time off, so we're just really grateful for this season and loving on our new little grandson. So
Amazing. Congratulations. That is so amazing.
thank you.
So
Yeah. It's really sweet. Like even just saying, you opened up saying it's such a busy season, and it is. And so there's just been this kind of noticing, like I don't know, been this tension with busyness as we started out the new year, and even last fall into the new year. But noticing, I'm just going to say, watching Tyler kind of pull back and slow down and come out of, work mode, trying to get everything ready so he could have time off to be with the baby. I mean, he works for a company that is so incredibly generous, and they give them 12 weeks maternity leave. So he's taking part of it now, and then he'll take part of it throughout the year. But to watch him slow down every single day, he and Faye go for a bike ride someplace. To a park, to the farmer's market, to meet some friends. I mean, every single day they do that. It's very, like, as a mom, I'm just going to tell you, it's really rewarding to watch him do that so well and really transition to being so present with his family. And so just really, it's sweet to see them kind of slow it down, which kind of honestly leads to what we want to talk about. Like, Shawna, have you felt like it's been a really busy beginning of the year?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right?
this is a crazy time. And the be kind to your future self. I do write a little note to my future self, like back in October, and say, all right, girl, here it comes. Like this is push season, and it's going to get really busy, and it's going to remain that way for a while. And I think, not to one up you or anything, but there's a uniqueness, I think, to this time of the year in the Midwest, in West Michigan, because everybody likes snow at Christmas time. At Thanksgiving, you're like, once Thanksgiving is behind you, you're like ready for snow because it makes it feel festive and it makes it feel like the holidays and whatnot. You get into January and you get hit with some really cold temps and dumped some snow on, and you're like, okay, we're good. And then it keeps coming, and you get it well into February, and the weather is still like this morning, winter weather advisory, driving to work on a thin layer of ice that's just covered with a fresh little layer of snow. And it's like, okay, right about now you're kind of over it. And a lot of people go south this time of the year, to be honest, just to get a break. In fact, I'm coming to California next week. That's going to be a really nice break from the weather here. But yeah, it's a busy season, and it's a long season, and it's in West Michigan, cold and dark.
Now, somebody just said this to me who used to live in the Midwest, but he said January is actually colder than December. Is that true?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. It has been here. And last year in January, we were in Australia. So,
oh, right.
We went for like two weeks. I think it was like 2.5 weeks if you consider our travel time and all of that too. So we did get a nice little break last year, but
and not only that, but then you were home for what, less than a week?
And then turned around and went to India. Yeah, you're right. I was
so
I was not
you
home
legit.
I skipped January last year, so I did miss out on a lot of it. So it is feeling really long right about now. It's a long season. It's a busy season. And you'd think like cold weather, snow, like things cancel. And I feel like we experienced more of that in Iowa when we lived in Iowa, but in West Michigan, like y'all, these West Michiganders are hardy and they just don't stop. They just keep going. So the schedule doesn't seem any less busy.
See, now I find that interesting because I have said this before. If I lived in the snow, I wouldn't go outside on those days.
Right. But
So
you
it
still need
is really
groceries and you're
interesting.
still expected to go to work and then still all the things.
Delivery.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you because you have to learn to do life there where
Mhm.
that's just something so far beyond me. Where I think living in Southern California, I mean, it's cold right now. Cold for us. It's cold right
Sure.
now. Like it's I mean, there's some ice on the roads in the morning when I walk, and the other day I was out for a walk and like the kind of little muddy sections crunched under my feet. It was
Mm.
icy. But we've had some rain, thankfully. Oh my goodness, we've needed the rain. So it's definitely been chilly, but in Southern California, like the weather is never really where you need to slow down at
Right.
any level. You know what I mean? Like you might not be able to be outside while it's actually raining, but give it a couple of hours and you can be outside for a walk and you can go and do. So I always thought like Southern California is probably worse with not slowing down because our weather's
Yeah.
so stinking good. But I guess it just depends on what you're used to. You just
Yeah.
adapt.
When we first moved to Michigan, I didn't know how to drive in the snow, like driving in inclement weather. And so it just took a lot of concentration and I was learning a new skill. And I just remember one day driving home and the snow's like blowing sideways, a winter weather advisory. We're getting a dump of snow. And as I'm driving home, trying to navigate all these new things, there was a jogger. Like I had to watch out for
Yeah.
joggers. I was like, y'all,
No.
what are you doing? Like, take a day off. Do you not see how bad the weather is? But it's life in West Michigan,
Get a treadmill.
right?
That's
Exactly.
nutty.
Oh, that's so
That would be
funny.
me.
Yeah.
I would definitely not be out in the snow. But just, what this topic of busyness, this is something that has really just really hit home
Hmm.
this last couple of weeks. I mean, I can say the last couple of weeks. This is something that I've wrestled with for a long time, but I'm actually reading this really good book called Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools by Tyler Staton. It is really, really good. But one of the things he talks about is, I mean, he gives a bunch of these examples of just how we've gotten more and more busy and more busy. But he talked about how when now I'm gonna get all these stats wrong, but when the iPhone was developed, it was believed that we would get like, I think it was like 4 hours or 6 extra hours a day available to us. So see, people could sleep more, people could be with their family more, like all these
Mm,
great things that were going to come with the technology of the iPhone. And the exact opposite has happened. We spend so much time on our phones that we have less time available to us. And so
hmm,
this busyness thing, it's such a real problem. And so just even as I was reading his books, there was this point where I stopped and just prayed and asking the Lord to show me like where am I off kilter here
hmm,
in this busyness, right? And he revealed some really raw things to me. Like things like, how in the world can I busy myself with things so much that I don't have time to quiet my mind and spend
mm,
time quiet with him? Like there's when I do my silence and solitude practices, it takes me minutes to settle my mind so that I can actually just rest in the presence of God. That that is showing something is very wrong here. And then the other like real like I don't know, just thing that really struck me was the way that I rush through my day to get my errands run and things like that on my especially on Fridays on my I try to get so much done on my day off. I rush through the grocery store and like I'm so important. What
yeah.
what?
Sometimes
What
it seems
is
like
that?
sometimes like the whole busyness and the craziness and the beating the clock thing, I feel, and maybe this is how my translation of feeling important is, I feel like I'm in a James Bond film. Like it's all very tightly timed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like It's going to go
Yes.
like this and then like this and then I'll be here at this, and I put it all on my calendar, which my kids think is just hilarious. Like I put everything, instead of putting a chunk of time and saying I'm going grocery shopping, I'm like, nope, Target 30 minutes, Costco 30 minutes, Meijer an hour. You know what I mean? Just like
Yes, I do the
to
same
the
thing.
minute. Yeah,
Yep.
it's wild.
Yeah, which honestly, and then honestly, like I write those things down because the other thing is like then my mind is going like crazy. Okay, I need to get here, I need to get here. What's the fastest
Mm,
route to get
right.
from this place to the next place? And then honestly, like then we're not present. We're not
Mhm.
present to what the Lord is up to around us. We're not present to the Holy Spirit
Mhm.
prompting us. We're not I cannot believe how often I function that way. And then God gave me this visual. I was in Costco, which we talk about all the time, and um, right after this had happened, and this lady was rushing through Costco with her cart, like literally almost running people over. And God really stopped me in my tracks. And I said, Lord, do I look like that?
Oh, no.
Is that,
Yeah.
I mean, it just broke my heart. And I know there's times I have, and I thought that is not who I want to be.
Yeah.
She definitely thinks she is more important than anybody else in this store. And
Wow.
yeah, just he's just been breaking my heart for that. So um as I'm practicing silence and solitude, I think I'm bumping up against this busyness. Like busyness is keeping me from spending time with God. And
Mhm.
I'm busy, so that I can do more for God. My job is in ministry and, you
Right.
know, uh, but it's actually keeping me from a deep, intimate relationship with Him in the way that my relationship with Him should be. And so there's really a wrestling out that's going on right now.
Jodes, it's so good. This might not be a fair question if it's, it might be so fresh that you don't know the answer to this, which is totally cool. But I'm just curious, I know that busyness in my own life can, for me, I'm at times I'm avoiding something like, or I'm trying to
Yeah.
anesthetize myself with something like, nope, it's not alcohol. Nope, it's not drugs. It's, um, I feel like sometimes I get really, really busy to avoid things. Have you considered that, or have you thought about like what you might possibly be trying to avoid in the pace?
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think it is probably too fresh to really put my finger on it
Mm,
yet. I feel like that's something the Lord is showing me. But I also can genuinely say there are some
there's
things
stuff.
that
Yeah.
he is showing me. So like, yeah, just and this is real time processing, but one of
Mm-hmm.
the one of the things I'm really seeing is that some of the things that I believe God has put in my path, um, I'm fearful of stepping into it. And so that fear is stopping me from doing what he has called me to do, which if I stay too busy, then it's not that I'm being disobedient, it's that I don't have time to do
Right.
that thing. And so it's instead of just going, okay, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of
Yeah.
failure here. I'm afraid of the cost of this. I'm afraid of not being qualified.
Mm-hmm.
I and God, would you help me work through this? I can I can stay busy with good things, noble things,
Mm-hmm.
and completely not actually do the obedient thing. And so I'm definitely wrestling some of that out right now.
Thank you for being vulnerable and honest about that. I am going to drop Jamie Winship's name again because
Yeah.
I had him on the show the other day and was talking with him.
Which is so crazy. I said to Shauna right before we came on, I am so jealous and so excited for you that you got to
Yeah.
interview him. That is
Yeah.
crazy.
Had him on Perry and Shauna Mornings, the radio show that I do. And anyway, he was talking about, he said there's we have only two motivators in life, and it's either fear or it's love that motivate us to do anything. And so, to whenever we're afraid of something, to be able to say, okay, I am motivated by fear in this, in what I'm acting out right now, but what would it look like to be motivated by love? What would it look like to see God rightly? Because in so many times in the Bible, we're told, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. And it's not like, I don't think God is scolding us and saying, don't be afraid. I think he's saying, listen, if you knew the truth about how for you I am and how present I am and how much I want for you, like more than you want for you, and my plans and how good they are, you'd be like, I don't need to worry. If we truly believe that God is who he says he is, perfect love casts out fear, right? So there's going to be less being motivated by fear in our lives and more being motivated by love. And I'll be honest in sharing. I asked you that question, like, what do you think you're avoiding? Because I became aware this week of something that I was avoiding. So there's this. It's so important to quiet our minds to be able to
Yeah.
hear from the Lord, because our busy minds aren't listening for him. Our busy minds are thinking about all the things and what's coming in the future, or maybe even ruminating about something that happened in the past that shouldn't have happened. And it keeps us from being present in the right here, right now. But it also keeps us from connecting with God in the right
Yeah.
here, right now. And I realized this week that God's been communicating with me most often, Jodes, in my very first waking thought. In that place before, like, I'm not awake and conscious yet, but I'm not asleep. It's not like in my dreams. It's like in that
Yeah.
place in between.
Yep.
So, like, I'll hear a song lyric, but it just doesn't leave me alone. And I hear it over and over and over again. And I know that it's the Lord that planted it there and that there's more for me to discover about that song lyric. Or this morning, I woke up with a sentence, just one sentence in my mind. I wasn't dreaming. It wasn't connected to anything I watched on TV last night. I really feel like God saying to me, I know you're struggling to quiet your mind when we're sitting together, when you're praying, even when you're reading through scripture. Because sometimes I can be reading through a chapter or something, and I'm thinking, I have to undo this thinking in my brain, because I'll be thinking like, oh, that's good. That would make great content for the show tomorrow. Instead of like,
Right.
Lord, what are you saying to my heart in this moment? And what do you want me to know about what I'm reading? And so I feel like he's speaking to me in this in between awake and asleep place, because there's nothing else there in my brain at that point. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So just even that word over him, this is a saying I've had written up on my computer for years and years and years, but it's God is more concerned about what he's doing in you than
Mm,
what he's doing through you. And
mhm,
everything that we do, whether it's ministry or whatever role you have, anything good comes out of first being in relationship with God and then, being able to be about his work. And so I love that. But I love that you're kind of hearing things. I literally have had that happen this week too, where
really?
I was teaching, I had taught Tuesday night and then I was teaching again Wednesday morning. And Wednesday morning, as I was waking up, the closing part of my teaching, God gave me a new ending to it.
Mm,
And I woke up and it was like, oh, wait a second. That was okay. Some clarity here and just kind of where you wanted me to go with that. And it was just so sweet. But it's such a sweet way that he talks. So, Shawna, just a question. As you feel like you're in this season of really hearing God as you wake up,
mhm.
are you writing those things
I
down?
am. I am. And we've
Good
talked
for
about this on
you.
the show before, but what I decided to do, because I think I shared with you that Bryn, we were reflecting over the previous year,
Yeah.
and she's just like flipping through her journal and saying, and God told me this, and God told me that. And I'm like, how are you finding that so quickly and so easily? So that was the encouragement to me, or the motivation that I needed to figure out how to capture the things that God is saying. And so I know this is, I don't know, it's convenient, but I have a notes on my phone that I have opened
Good
up.
for
And
you.
so I'm dating it, and then I'm
Yep.
writing in capital letters what I heard from the Lord. And then any thoughts that I have around it, I'm kind of like there are bullet points underneath, so that I can easily identify, this is specifically what I heard. Because sometimes, and I've done this week, Jodes, I'll hear something and I start to translate it or I start to run with it instead of saying, "Oh, that's interesting, God. Why did you tell me that?" Or "What do you want me to know
Yes.
about that?" And sitting with it, I think I think, I know what he's saying and I know what I need to do, so I'm going to go blah 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 instead of continuing the conversation and continuing to hear from him and just kind of settling into it.
Right. And because really it's about relationship with him. And we take the thought and hit the ground running
Yeah.
because we're so busy, right? It's the way our minds work. I love that you're so aware of that. You know
Yeah.
what? I want to back up, like even kind of at the beginning of this, when you were talking about, the scripture that says, do not fear, do not be anxious. Philippians 4 is a big one that we use a lot for
Mhm.
do not be anxious about anything, but in prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests. I mean, it's great. It is a great, I think all the way through verse 9, like it is so, so good. But we always start with do not be anxious about anything. It starts with the Lord is near.
The Lord is near. He's right here
And that
right
is
now.
something I feel
Yeah.
like, right, sister? So, like, I feel like that's been a constant this last I don't know how many weeks, 6, 7 weeks, where it like, even as I pray for peace over people, it's like, yeah, God, I want you
Mhm.
to give them peace, but you are peace. It's in your presence that we
Right.
experience peace.
Yeah, I think we tend to think of peace as like a commodity that he has endless access to, instead of
Right.
understanding that he is the Prince of Peace and us becoming awake to the fact that he's right here, right now. We experience peace in his presence. It's not that he gives us some and then he goes off to somebody else to see what they need. We get to experience peace as we recognize that he is right here, right now, that he's with us.
Right. So and that in real time, a very real way that it plays out is so practicing silence and solitude.
Hmm.
Like I notice when things are really busy and life is feeling a bit chaotic, it takes me minutes to slow down my mind and actually turn my focus to God. And so I've been doing a practice where I sit quiet. I'm trying to do it every day right before I start my workday. So I start my morning with my quiet time, and then I work out and I go for a walk. But before I start my workday, I'm trying to do this a couple minutes of silence. But
Yeah.
also on my walks, I've been using the Lectio 365 or just putting on some instrumental Christian music and just spending time with the Lord. And I do find when I walk, sometimes it's a little bit easier for me to turn my focus to God.
Hmm.
When I'm sitting quiet, it's a little bit harder to quiet my mind because my list of to do things keep
Sure.
running. So, but it's like any muscle. We've talked about this before. The more we practice it, the easier it gets, the stronger it gets. And so I'm really working on that and I can see the fruit of it. But it's also taking discipline to kind of
Hmm.
lean in because I want to, I want to recognize that my not fearing, my not being anxious comes because the Lord is near.
Yeah.
I want to live in that.
Yeah. And I think some of the obstacles, if you will, that keep us from being able to settle our minds. For me, I know an obstacle at times for me in being able to just quiet myself and just hear from the Lord as I'm afraid what he's going to say.
Yeah.
Like, God, are you going to ask me to give up something that I've been clinging to instead of clinging to you? It's going to be hard for me to let go of that thing. Or are you going to remind me of something that you've said that I haven't been obedient to yet? And I know I'm not walking in obedience in it. And I don't, I don't want to be called out. Like, and that speaks to, man, some wrong thinking, some stinking thinking about
Yeah.
who God is, that we would fear that the one who loves us perfectly wouldn't speak to us in love and only ask us to do the things that he wants us to do because they are what he created us for, what we were meant for. But yeah, I think part of it is what will you say? And maybe for some people it's I'm afraid that if I quiet my mind and I ask God to speak to me, I'm afraid that he won't. What if I don't?
Yeah.
What if I don't hear from the Lord and then I feel abandoned or like does he even know I'm here? So I think some of those fears can get in the way of us quieting ourselves and being vulnerable and ready to hear from the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we get, I mean, fear is definitely, I think, a driving factor of keeping us from getting quiet. Um, because even if we quiet our minds, we actually have to allow the Lord to deal with some of the junk that's been going on. And, that's a little bit scary too. But the other thing too is like, and I am talking to myself here, why in the world do I operate in a way that I'm fearful of what God is going to say to me or require of me when truthfully that is 100% the best thing
Mhm.
for me? And so, what is it that I mean? We're studying Genesis right now with our women's Bible study, and it is so, so good. But you look at these lives and the hot mess. Like we're studying
Mhm.
Jacob right now, and so I've just taught 2 lessons on Jacob, and you just think, ah, Jacob, pull it together. Man, you can do so much better than this. You are not getting it, and God has given you chance after chance after chance, because it's so easy to see it, and we
Yeah.
also know the end result. But it's so easy to see it in his life, his disobedience. Like just this past week, I was teaching on Genesis 32 and 33, and it's when Jacob comes from Haran. He heads south to meet Esau after Esau, 20 years later, Esau, the last time he saw Esau, Esau wanted to kill him, his brother. And Esau is heading north with 400 men to meet up with Jacob because Jacob had sent message he was on his way. And Jacob is afraid. He is afraid, but they meet. Esau has forgiven him. Jacob's like, yeah, God told me to come home, so I'm going to be right behind you. You go ahead. And then he immediately heads to I think is the east. He immediately heads to someplace completely different. So like you see time after time, and this is after God has just come and wrestled with him. You see time after time where God has spoken truth over him. God has called him to more. There's reconciliation, and still, how does Jacob make decisions? Fear,
Mhm.
completely out of fear. And I just I want to shake him, and then I have to look at my own life, and I
And
think,
go,
oh,
"Oh, man, that's me." That's wild because I am in the Gospels right now and just read today about, Jesus, feeds the 5,000, then he feeds the 4,000. Then he's talking with the disciples about, yeast, and they're like, "Oh,
what?
shoot, do we have enough bread?" And it's like, "Seriously? Seriously? That is your concern right now? Like, you just saw Jesus feed thousands of people twice, and he brings up yeast, and your first thought is, "Oh, stink. Who's got the bread?
Bread.
Whose job was it to get the bread, and do we have enough bread?" And it's like, "Oh my goodness, we are so forgetful and fearful, and you know, God can do amazing things in our life on Tuesday, and Wednesday morning we can wake up full of fear, just not sure that he's,
Right.
are you mindful of me? Do you see me? Do you know what I need?"
So just even that example, I think the visual I get with that is, God is at work in this magnificent way
Mm,
over all of his creation. And my view is this straight, narrow thing right in front of me and exactly how it impacts me. That's how I see things
mm.
at work in the world. And so you can certainly tell because, if I was in that scenario where the disciples were, when my mind is focused completely on me, I'd be thinking, "Oh, we have no bread. I'm going to be
Yeah,
hungry. Wait,
I'm
what are we
gonna
going to
be
do? How are we going to eat? The 12 of us, how are we going to eat?" Right?
I remember being in California. We were in Joshua Tree and we had a Suburban, and we had come from Arizona, and we decided that we would, take the adventurous route and take our Suburban off-roading, and we had my husband's parents, and our 4 kids. And it was getting dark, and it was taking us longer to find the trail to get back. We weren't sure which was the way, and I was like, it's getting darker and darker and darker, and I was like, okay, this is a little bit it's a little bit dramatic. But I was like, we are going to get stuck out here. And all I have is half a loaf of bread and 2 bottles of water. And I've got old people and I've got young people. So, the last person who's going to get bread, that's going to be me. I'm going to be the last person. I'm not even going to get the butt of the bread. I'm going to get no bread and I'm going to get no water and I'm going to die. So,
because it won't be light in 8 hours.
It was a little bit dramatic, but it was such a hyper focus on me.
Yeah.
And we've come full circle in the conversation, Jodes, because you were talking about the lady at Costco who was running around like a wild woman, thinking she was the most important thing on the planet. And the very beginning of stepping into relationship with the Lord, like the first thing is, hey, take your eyes off yourself and fix your eyes on me. Look what I did. Look what I did on the cross. Look what I did for you.
Yeah.
I love you. I've got a plan. You can trust me. I'm not going to go anywhere. You and I were going to do this whole thing together. And so it's a shift from me focus to other focus. But it's a shift that we have to make. Like, I want to say daily, but that ain't it. Like more like hourly or, every
minute by
15
minute.
minutes. Yeah. To just
Right.
oh, wow, Lord, help me to be more like you. I think of even just the Trinity, the Father pouring love on the Son and the Spirit, and the Son honoring the Father. And like, it's this constant, beautiful giving away. And so to become like Jesus, to show the world who the God is that we love so much, is to get our eyes off of ourselves, off of our busy schedule, off of all of the things, and to be aware of the reality of his presence right now, but also to be not worried about me, not focused on me, but eyes fixed on him.
Amen. So Shawna and I have been talking about kind of what gets in our way of really spending time in the presence of God. And we've talked about fear. We've talked about busyness. What is it for you? What is it that seems to be getting in the way of you spending time with your creator, with your savior, with the mighty God? What is it that is making you not slow down and spend time in his presence? Because we talked about it's in his presence that we experience perfect peace. Yeah. And that's what we want. We want that intimate relationship with him, because that's the heart of what it means to be his follower, is to be following him, wearing the dust of our rabbi. So we need to wrap up today, but we just want to remind you that the heart of this topic is that there's joy in the presence of God. And so we need to remember that we serve a real God and he really loves you.